A 19th century English physician and educator, Peter Mayer Latham, once said, "Poison and medicines are often the same substance, given with different intents." A simple analogy that illustrates the potency of medicine to heal, maim, or kill. In government's quest to ensure universal health coverage across the globe, pharmacists have remained at the forefront of many important issues regarding affordable health care, drug safety and customer service. This becomes even more serious with the alarming death rates and complications arising from exposure to substandard medicines, which threaten to roll back decades of efforts to combat malaria, tuberculosis, HIV, and other health conditions in Nigeria. That substandard medicines remain a potential crisis for public health is not in doubt, as the impact on the health of unsuspecting patients is grave. With about 10 to 30% of medicine sold in developing countries reported to be counterfeit, according to the Center for Disease Control, and evidence of increasing treatment failure as well as huge financial losses attributable to substandard drugs, commentators believe the issue should top strategies for a healthy society. The Dateline 360 team falls in this line this week, beaming such light on this health burden described as deadlier than terrorism. Welcome, I'm Hawa Salihu Adama. This is Dateline 360. We are glad you joined us this week. Now, whatever the reason for the substandard status of a drug, the impact on the patient remains the same: pain, agony, and even loss of life. Let's now join Rashida Mustafa Olagunju for our lead report, which focuses on the story of substandard drugs in Nigeria.
Medicine is a chemical substance used to treat, cure, prevent, or diagnose diseases, or to promote well-being. The World Health Organization, WHO, defines substandard drugs, also called out-of-specification products, as genuine medicines produced by manufacturers authorized by the medicines regulatory body, but which does not meet quality specification set for them.
They are just drugs that they are not up to the standard. It's either the active ingredient has been altered in terms of the quantity and the quality. And by taking that kind of a drugs, it's obvious, the effect is obvious, because there won't be any effect. And adibine is, in case of antibiotics, it will only cause resistance to the drug, to the strains of what we ask the drug to do inside the body. And in other words, it can cause harm, which could lead to death.
In emerging economies, these drugs present a serious public health challenge with significant clinical and economic burden on nations.
Yeah, the prevalence is quite significant, especially in a society like ours. You know, what I mean is that where the regulation, of drugs administration is not effective, and where culprits that are apprehended are not made to face the music.
Government of the day and put the duty on imported active pharmaceutical ingredients, which manufacturers need here to produce medication, put that duty now on zero, so that the producers in this country can have a chance to compete against imported drugs. And that also has the advantage that you can control what is being produced here, and you can also provide jobs.
I think over 70% of essential medicines have been imported into the country. Naturally, where you have the preponderance of importation, that is also where the counterfeit is coming in from. So most of these essential medicines that are heavily imported are also coming from Asia, particularly India and China.
Substandard medicines were first discovered in Nigeria in 1986.
But it's not very clear how prevalent it is, and also, in fact, the very definition of substandard or the cause of being substandard. Sometimes there are errors in manufacturing, sometimes the error is in transportation. So the exact figure is not clear, but the guidelines laid down by the NAFDAC on drug distribution and dispensation are supposed to be used to regulate the distribution and those who distribute drugs to avoid finding drugs in marketplaces in the hands of unqualified people.
Most common substandard drugs in Nigeria, experts say, are anti-malaria, antibiotic, painkillers, and some hospital consumables. Research indicates that neglect of good manufacturing practice, both accidental and deliberate, drive the circulation of such drugs, while inaccurate or inadequate understanding of the impact among health workers and the public also contribute to the problem.
Is it difficult to accumulate these statistics? It becomes very difficult in our own climate, in an African setting where the people have to resign to God. But what we do know is that the issue of counterfeit drug is causing, dealing a devastating blow on the economy of the country and also even the Nigerian population. For us at NAFDAC, a counterfeiter is worse than an armed robber. It's a murderer, and that is why we are pushing at the National Assembly for a capital punishment.
Allegation abounds of foreign multinational drug companies, driven essentially by profit, conniving with desperate drug dealers in Nigeria to bring substandard drugs to the country in a way that is difficult to detect and stop, thereby making the job of regulatory bodies difficult.
That's why NAFDAC created the Post-Marketing Surveillance and Pharmacovigilance Directorate, specifically created to solve the problem of escapees.
Obtaining drugs through backyards or in market, or injections, taking injections in market or drips in market, as we hear, all those are illegal and they are dangerous. People should not be doing that.
So, however, a safe medicine supply is fundamental for an effective public health, as substandard medicine leads to unnecessary mortality and morbidity, as well as loss of public confidence in medicine and health structure.
Very well, Rashida. One that calls for accelerated effort at reversing the trend whereby a few unethical physicians and pharmacists have become drug suppliers, posing serious threat to the safety of the people. We now go to two major centers where the issue at hand is worrisome. Joy Ken Abakoya is in Lagos, Nigeria's commercial nerve center, which houses major manufacturers and drug distributors.
They are usually found at motor parks and other public places. They display their wares with reckless abandon to attract customers. They are drug hawkers who operate without license from NAFDAC. Investigations have shown that these substandard drug hawkers have no education, yet they sell drugs they know little or nothing about. Interestingly, this illicit business thrives in a city like Lagos, where you have more than half of the pharmaceutical manufacturing companies.
Every nook and cranny in this Lagos state, if you go along the streets, you see them. If you go to Lagos Island, you see them. Go to mainland, they're all there.
The reason why is because of enforcement. Because the enforcement agents are not able or are not equipped to do their job effectively, so they cannot properly cover the areas that they need to cover. I think that's one of the main issues. And then people's, I call it a poverty mentality, because you think that, well, since you can get something cheaper from this person, you are not looking into how the person is storing the drugs, how the person is packaging the drugs, what the drug, you're not looking at all that. So because they still have continuous patronage, then we will have people that are willing to provide that service.
These killer drugs range from antibiotics, sex enhancement capsules to malaria and typhoid tablets.
The big question is, why would anyone patronize roadside drug sellers in a cosmopolitan city like Lagos? Are they aware of the dangers of consuming substandard drugs?
I have stomach pain now. For me to go to the hospital, maybe the hospital is very far from where I'm staying now. So I have to go to nearby pharmacy or people outside that they are just selling drugs outside. I will just say, I have to buy some medicine. That my stomach is failing me and they'll just give me medicine. Not only the illiterate people that patronize them, you have some literate people also patronizing them. Maybe because at that point in time, they feel that they don't have money to buy a full course of their treatment, and they can get at least something. Unfortunately, with drugs is not like food, that at least something is better than nothing. For drugs, for some drugs, especially things like antibiotics or drugs for chronic diseases, you need to use your drugs, you need to be adherent to your drugs as much as possible.
Activities of these hawkers have left millions of Lagosians with sorry tales. The Lagos state government has, however, started sensitization campaign in public places.
We have the pharmacies who are registered by the Pharmacists Council, and we have the patent medicine vendors who are also registered by the Pharmacists Council and who are licensed. Those are the only two bodies who are legitimately allowed to operate pharmacies or pharmacy outlets and drug outlets. We do want to encourage persons also to come forward if you find situations in your area where people are engaging in illegal sales of medicines.
Observers say sustaining awareness on the dangers of consuming substandard drugs and introduction of stiffer punishment for violators are important to end the practice. From Lagos for Dateline 360, I am Joy Ken Abakoya.
Sure, Joy, but before we talk about sanctions, let's get the situation report in Kano, another cosmopolitan center in northern Nigeria. Over now to Fatima Sanusi Karai.
That was the destruction of fake and substandard drugs by Kano State Police Command. Fake and substandard drugs are major parts of health problems in developing countries, endangering the lives of people, as 25% of all drugs consumed in developing countries are said to be fake or substandard. Kano, being a huge consumer base and one of the most populous states in the country, has this substance in circulation.
This is Sabangari Market, and behind that building is the open drug market where people can go and buy any kind of drug without prescription.
In the past few years, Kano has taken the lead in drug abuse, despite the fact that there are regulatory systems controlling the sale of this substance. They are rightly available in an open drug market at Sabangari, Kano, and on the streets being sold by unauthorized individuals.
We get this drug from Sabangari. If someone has headache, do you know what to give him? Yes, I will give him Sodrex.
Some of these drugs find their way into the country illegally, while some are manufactured locally and flow into Sabangari drug market. Malam Aminu Pase, who has malaria and sore throat, happened to have bought 3 different drugs from 3 different patent medicine stores, but all to no avail.
I have been taking this medicine, but honestly, I am not better. I don't even know what to do.
There was a time I fell sick, went to the pharmacy and buy drugs. I have been using it for many days, at least a week or more than that. But the drugs do not have positive effects.
A surveillance around the Sabangari open drug market in a bid to fight the menace, Kano State Police Command intercepted a large quantity of controlled and substandard drugs with a street value of over 33 million naira. The command also arrested Abbasani, a student of Federal College of Education, Katsina, with 490 bottles of adulterated intoxicating cough syrup.
Somebody from Abuja gave me to sell it for him.
The Commissioner State Ministry of Health, Dr. Kabir Gezo, said about 300 drug hawkers were arrested and 1,000 patent medicine stores closed down in violation of the operating laws in July 2015, adding that the fight is still on.
There are renewed efforts to, step up the fight against these illicit drugs and fake drugs in Kano State. So we are trying to give it more prominence, more vigor, so that we will have more sanity in the society.
Health experts are of the opinion that to put effective countermeasures against substandard and counterfeit drugs, there is need for government to come up with stringent measures to hold defaulters accountable. Until then, Malam Aminu and his likes will continue to pay the price of substandard drugs with their health and lives. In Kano, Fatima Sanusi, RIA, Dateline 360.
A disturbing narrative, Fatima, considering that the borders for substandard drugs are seamless with the low-income and illiterate group comprising the biggest victims. And protecting this group and others through sanctions for the adamant perpetrators of substandard medicines is the focus of our next report by Abdullahi Garba Brinin Kudu.
Been encouraging the public to go to premises, pharmacies that have the Green Cross emblem. That is where you will find a registered pharmacist, a pharmacist that will be responsible for his actions.
This is a confirmation that there are laws and regulations governing drug administration in Nigeria. By way of collaboration, the National Agency for Food, Drugs Administration and Control, NAFDAC, an agency saddled with the responsibility of regulating drugs issue, work hand in hand with sister governmental and non-governmental organizations to cleanse the country of counterfeit drugs. The Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria, Association of Community Pharmacists of Nigeria, and the Pharmacists Council of Nigeria, all working in this category towards a common goal.
So if the products are not NAFDAC registered, we seize them. If the products are in the wrong premises, say the license does not cover, the license holder is not supposed to deal in such products, we seize them because he has not been trained in the handling of such products. So we confiscate them and submit them to the federal government.
However, this problem of substandard drugs continues to persist, leading to the question to what extent are these regulatory bodies executing their mandates.
We have a law that we call Counterfeit and Unwholesome Product Registration Decree, which is an act. And if you violate that and you have found and it's established that the person is involved, the ultimate aim is to prosecute the violator. NAFDAC has been able to prosecute some offenders in this discipline. And recently there was one that was involved in counterfeit anti-malaria medicine, and the person was jailed without option of a fine, which is a very commendable effort. But the challenge we have in the prosecution is that it's always very, very capital intensive, and it takes a long time to get the person prosecuted. Then the second thing is that we've tried to review the laws to make sure that people involved in counterfeit anti-malaria medicine, especially importation, sale, and distribution, should be considered as a very serious offense, and the law should be amended in such a way that it should not be a bailable offense.
Coming from the consequences of this trend of substandard drugs, as a result of which many Nigerians have been losing their lives, Dateline 360 takes this matter before the lawmakers. Dr. Larry Joshua is the chairman Senate Committee on Health.
We realized that the penalties, they were not good deterrents for offenders. So we increased the number of years for the penalties. If you go through the amendments that we did. But be that as it may, the main problem is not really in our laws. Our problem is that of implementation. Because the laws have always been there, but we need people that will be dedicated to ensure that our laws are obeyed. We need enforcers. We need the responsible institutions to rise up to the occasion.
Well, however, it's evident that to address this problem of substandard or counterfeit drugs, Nigerians must take ownership of their own health. That is by ensuring that for any prescribed drugs, they must visit accredited medical school. As it's been said, prevention is better than cure. Reporting for Dateline 360, Abdullahi Garba.
True, Abdullahi, as prevention remains a cheaper option. And on taking ownership, Ruben Okala was out in the streets.
It is an established fact that drugs, for some strange reasons, do cause adverse reaction, which affects victims very badly. You can imagine the kind of negative effects they will cause if such drugs are substandard?
Yes, the truth is that the risk of patronizing quacks, it's so enormous. One, the quacks, they don't know what you're giving you. They give you all sort of fakes, compounds that are not really certified, that are not healthy for your organs, your cells, and as it being. And you get what I'm saying. And as such, when you take it in, these things are meant to be metabolized within your system. And then when you take a poison into your system, all it does, instead of fixing you, it destroys the system. It destroys your cells. And at the end, you come up with all sort of effects. Like you said, blindness, or have kidney failure. You've been hearing of kidney failure, right? It's very, very rampant. It's because of taking some of these things that are unwholesome.
Experts say adverse drug reactions are gradually being contained considerably due to precautionary measures being put in place by relevant authorities. In the meantime, one event that Nigerians will remember in a long time to come is the very aggressive fight against counterfeit and substandard drugs by late Professor Dora Akunyili, who was then the Director General of NAFDAC. This may not be unconnected with the drastic reduction of crimes in that sector till date. Players of the industry have continued to advise on the need for people to patronize only professionals in the quest to minimize resultant effects of substandard drugs. For Dateline 360, I am Ruben Okala reporting.
Ensuring that only medicines of acceptable quality reach patients, Ruben, is also critical. Of all the negative consequences of substandard medicines, perhaps the most alarming is the increasing resistance and treatment failures of major ailments leading to complications. While concerted effort is required on the part of government to make medicines more affordable, commentators say drug manufacturers, distributors and healthcare providers need to prioritize human life above other personal considerations so that this hydra-headed monster can be addressed. For regulatory agencies, improving the drug registration process and monitoring shelf life of drugs throughout the manufacturing and distribution chain in line with international best practices will not be out of place. Send us your comments, questions and suggestions on Dateline 360 at nta.ng or at NTA News Now. Our last word targets every user of medicine on the need to avoid medical quacks, as real happiness is cheap enough, yet how clearly we pay for its counterfeit. Thanks for your time and bye for now.